Have you ever gotten into a debate about using who versus whom? Or maybe you've noticed pretty much everyone uses they to talk about a single person these days. Well, if you have, you've accidentally stumbled right into one of the oldest and most fascinating battles in the English language. Today, we are diving deep into that tug of war over who really gets to decide the rules. I mean, it seems like a simple question, right? But the answer is, well, it's complicated. For centuries, there have been two completely different philosophies fighting for control over our grammar, kind of like two opposing teams. So, in one corner, you've got the prescriptivists. Think of them as the rule makers. They believe language should follow a very specific official set of rules. And in the other corner, the descriptivists. They're the observers. Their argument is, hey, language is defined by how real people actually use it every single day. So let's see how this plays out with a few classic examples. Okay, let's kick things off with a true classic, the slow, dramatic death of the word whom. It's the perfect case study of a rule that makes total sense on paper, but in the real world, it's getting absolutely crushed by how we actually talk. You see, this whole who versus whom thing really boils down to something called grammatical case. It's kind of like a fossil left over from older forms of English, where your pronouns had to change their uniform depending on their job in a sentence. Are you the one doing the action, or is the action being done to you? That's what case is all about. So, how do the rule makers say you should get it right every time? Well, they have this neat little trick called the he-him test. All you do is rephrase the sentence to answer the question. If your answer is he, you use who. But if the answer is him, you use whom. And here's the pro tip. Both heim and whom end in M. Easy to remember, right? And check this out. You can see the logic laid out perfectly here. Who lines up with all the subject pronouns like he and she. Meanwhile, whom hangs out with the object pronouns like him and her. On paper, it's a beautifully consistent system. So, if the rule is so clean and logical, why is whom basically on life support? It's because we just don't need it anymore. Modern English relies on word order, where the words are in the sentence, to tell us who's doing what. That special M on whom has become totally redundant, and as speakers, we're just letting it go. All right, let's jump to our next case. This isn't a story about a word fading away. Nope. This is about a word that has stubbornly refused to die, even after centuries of people trying to kill it. I'm talking about the singular they. You know, a lot of people think using they for one person is some brand new modern trend. But that could not be further from the truth. Not even close. The singular they has been a rock-solid part of English for over 600 years. I mean, just look at this timeline. It pops up in medieval poems, the greatest writers in history use it, and then boom, in the 18th century, some prescriptive grammarians just decided it was wrong because, they is supposed to be plural. But guess what? It never went away. And now it's finally getting its due, even being named Word of the Year. That's right, even William Shakespeare used the singular they when a person's gender was unknown or just not important. So no, this isn't some new invention. It's a classic feature of our language that's always been there to do a very specific and very important job. The rule makers tried everything to get rid of it. First, they told everyone to just use he, but that feels pretty exclusionary. Then they gave us the super clunky he or she, which just trips up your sentences. People even invented over 100 new pronouns to try and fix the problem. But none of them ever caught on. You want to know why? Because we already had a perfectly good word for it. They. And here's the kicker. We've done this exact same thing before. The word you used to be only for talking to groups. If you were talking to one person, you'd say thou. But over time, you just took over both jobs. The exact same shift is happening with they. It just goes to show you that pronouns can and do change their roles to fit what we need them to do. Okay, this all leads us to our final puzzle, one that the singular they helps solve perfectly. It's the whole everyone, there situation, and it actually reveals something really deep about how our brains are wired for language. There's this cool linguistic concept called notional agreement. It's what happens when the strict technical grammar of a word clashes with what it actually means in our heads. And when that fight happens, guess what? Meaning almost always wins. Just think about the word everyone. It ends in one, so technically it's singular. The old school prescriptive rulebook says you have to follow it with a singular pronoun like his. But come on, when you hear everyone, what do you picture? You picture a whole crowd of people, right? The idea in your head is plural, so it just feels way more natural to say there. And this is where singular they is the perfect solution. It matches that plural mental picture we have for words like everyone, and it totally sidesteps the awkward and biased his or the clunky his or her. It's efficient, it's inclusive, and it's what our brains wanted to do all along. So, after looking at all this evidence, what's the verdict in the epic case of rules versus reality? Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. The fading of whom shows us that when a rule stops being useful for clarity, we just stop using it. The incredible survival of singular they proves that a useful word can withstand centuries of attack. And the everyone there puzzle reveals that, deep down, our brains care more about what makes sense than what's technically correct. So in the end, who decides the rules of English? We do. All of us, every time we speak. Language isn't some ancient relic carved in stone. It's a living, breathing, evolving tool that is constantly being shaped by the people who use it to meet our needs for clarity, for efficiency, and for inclusion. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The changes we've talked about took a long time, but our language is always, always in motion. So, what's a grammar rule you were taught in school that you think might be the next one to become a historical artifact? Let us know what you think. Thanks so much for diving into this with us.